It's out there in TV land. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining us this morning. Don't forget to like our video here and subscribe to our page. Share as much as you can. And certainly if you feel the inclination to give, then there is a link below in the comment section, and you can actually click there and go give online. And of course that goes for all of our folks here in person. You can give online through the app, the Gathering Echo, or you can obviously give in person. So again, happy Easter. Thank you so much for being here. It's wonderful to see everybody. I'm glad that you were excited and energized to get up this morning on this very, very special day of celebration for us. Because the truth is, without this day, we really don't have anything to celebrate, right? We don't have anything to believe in. We don't have a hope if there's not a resurrection. And Paul makes that very clear, that we have to have the resurrection, right? Otherwise, Jesus is like every other prophet or every other God out there that's been created by man, and he has no power. He has no real power. He's ultimately powerless. But praise God, he did raise from the dead. He did get up on that very special, the 8th day of the week, as N.T. Wright says. After the Sabbath on Saturday, then there is a new beginning on Sunday, and Jesus raising from the dead makes it a whole new day, a whole new calendar, a whole new week. Now we've got this new beginning, praise God, of this day of resurrection. And of course, every Sunday is sort of a mini resurrection day, right? But we do set aside this one day a year, of course, this week, right? And ultimately, maybe even a 30 or 40 day period. If you follow along with some of the more Catholic beliefs or more Orthodox beliefs. So last week, today's title is Caves into Gardens. So last week I talked about the allegory of the cave. That's kind of where we kicked off, and essentially. Of course, obviously, if you've missed that, then certainly go back and watch the video or listen to it online. And then Wednesday was kind of a follow-up to that. But essentially, within the cave or within Socrates' cave or Plato's cave, there are these people who are chained to this wall, and there's a light that's shining in from behind them from outside. There's some source of light that is casting shadows on the wall, and they're chained at their neck and they're chained at their feet, so they can't go anywhere and they can't look at anything except for what is directly in front of them. And there are people behind them that are doing sort of shadow puppets with these figures, and they're sort of creating this world out in front of these people, and they're convincing them that this is reality. But then there's one that is set free, and he gets out into the world. And of course, at first he's blinded by the light of going out into the world and seeing the sun for the first time. And so there's this sort of growth that has to take place where he sees first shadows of things, and then he sees the objects themselves, and then he sees reflection of those objects in the water, and eventually he's able to look into the stars and look at the moon, and eventually, when he's finally acclimated, so to speak, to the environment, he's able to look directly into the sun and see the light of day. And then he's able to take that light and actually go back into the cave. Of course, the ones in the cave don't fully understand what's happening on the outside, and so they're trapped in the reality that they have lived in for their whole life, right? Someone chained them there from the time that they were coming up, and they've been convinced that this is reality. And so they don't really receive that so much. They sort of reject it. Actually, at one point, he says that they would maybe take hold and kill that person if they were so inclined. But this whole story, right, sort of speaks to a broader story or a theme that has been in our history for ages, and that is the story of the hero. And of course, we talked about heroes and how they go on their journeys, and of course they're coming out of their darkness or out of their naivety or out of their ignorance, and they're coming into an adventure. And that is, of course, the call to life. That's the call to being something greater than you are currently, or being something more, or going a place that is beyond your current borders or boundaries. And of course, the hero has all these trials and tests that they have to overcome. And ultimately, there is some form of sacrifice that has to be made, whether it's their own life and they die. And then, of course, that leads to something even greater, which is typically resurrection. Or they're giving up something, immensely valuable to them. And within that hero motif, of course, we see the picture of Christ, who comes as our hero, right? He is the ultimate hero for us. He is God that has made himself into a man, and so he's fully God and he's fully man, and he's showing us what it is to be human. He's showing us what it is to be God, all at the same time. And he makes the ultimate sacrifice by dying an innocent man's death. He was innocent, right? Because he was betrayed. He was falsely accused. He was lied on. They made up things, right? Just so they could murder him. And so he dies an innocent man's death, really. He's not guilty at all. Even takes the place, technically, of a criminal, right? In Barabbas. So Christ makes this ultimate sacrifice. And then Wednesday, I got to a point where I was talking about sort of this invitation to the sacrifice, right? Which really doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you look at it on the surface, right? Because Christ is suffering, and his invitation, while he's still alive and with the people, his invitation is to carry your cross. In other words, take up suffering, take up death, take up this sacrifice. That is the invitation. But I'm playing with the idea that this is an invitation to a divine play, because your sacrifice is actually work, right? Because it's difficult. And what we do every day is we make small sacrifices, maybe large sacrifices, right? When we go to work, we sacrifice large chunks of our time so that we can make money, so that we can earn a wage, and then we can use those funds to fund our life, right? To live in our society and culture, and to be a productive citizen, and so on and so forth. Perhaps that's to be with a partner and raise children and have a family, own a home, and have something nice. Whatever the case is, you're going out, you're making that sacrifice every day, right? Because truth is, you really don't have to if you don't want to. You could not make those sacrifices, and you could live a very different life. There's people, I know you see them every day, right? They're standing on the side of the road. They're asking people for money. Now, they're making different sacrifices, right? They're sacrificing their future for the immediate. Now, you're sacrificing something immediately for the future, for a better future, right? So it's this hope and imagination that you have within you that is looking forward to something greater. And of course, that is human nature, right? We understand a little bit, anyways, about time and how that it's not just now, but it's also later. And so I have to think about, having food now because my body needs the nourishment, but I also need to be thinking about having food later because I'll need a meal tomorrow, or I'll need a meal next week, or I'll need to save enough of this meat that I can feed my whole family again. And so we have this problem of looking out into it's a problem. It's a good thing and a bad thing, right? Because that also creates that anxiety, the fear that, maybe this won't happen or maybe this will happen, all those sorts of things. So within this sacrifice, right? Again, we're making these sacrifices for something greater in the future. So there's a story in the scriptures, in the book of Genesis, at the very beginning, right, where you have these two brothers. You all know the story better than I can tell it, even though it's only just a couple verses long. But the story goes, and these are the first real human beings, right? They're the first ones that are born out of humans, okay? So, because God created Adam and Eve, and then they, produced Cain and Abel. So Cain and Abel are, again, they're brothers, and Abel's sacrifice to God, they're making sacrifices, right, to God. And Abel's sacrifice is received, but Cain's is not. And so he becomes bitter and resentful, and he gets mad, that it gets mad at God, really, that his sacrifice isn't good enough, or isn't accepted, rather. It's not to say that it's not good enough, but it's not accepted. So in some way, shape, or form, it's not the right sacrifice. It's not the proper sacrifice. Now, of course, Reverend Juice, he's done, I think, a whole series on this, but we continue with this idea that if you make the proper sacrifices, right, then God, life, the universe, whatever you want to call it, we're calling it God, God's going to look on that with favor, right? And whatever that means. Because, again, it's sort of ambiguous in the story as to what that really means. Okay, God looked on Abel's sacrifice with favor. However, he did not for Cain. And so, again, if you're making those proper sacrifices, then they'll be accepted. So, well, what is the proper sacrifice? Well, that's really for you and God to figure out. But within the story, God warns Cain. He says, sin is crouching at your door, and it's waiting basically to devour you. Now, that's not really the translation is more of sin is waiting at the door like a sexually aroused predator ready to have its way with you. And the trouble is, Cain had already entered into a creative union with sin. So he missed the point altogether. And we've talked about what sin is, right? Hamartia or hamartia. Missing the mark, missing the point. He missed the point altogether. That the point was that he needed to make the proper sacrifices, whatever that was. He did not do that. And when he saw that someone else's sacrifice was accepted, he immediately became resentful and bitter towards God. So now his resentment has turned into hate. It's turned into all this anger. And now he's going to not just hurt his brother, not just harm his brother, but he's going to get revenge on God for not receiving his sacrifice. Oh, you like his sacrifice and not mine? Well, I'll show you this little pretty boy, your little golden star child. I'll show you, right? That's his motive, right? He's going to get back at God for not receiving his sacrifice. And so ultimately, he ends up murdering his brother. And this, of course, is, for us, the understanding is that we can't make subpar sacrifices, right? And expect to get the greatest result, right? To have the greatest favor on our life. And again, whatever this sacrifice may be, now we're talking about sort of the ultimate sacrifices today. Christ makes the proper sacrifice or the ultimate sacrifice. He makes his greatest sacrifice, right? And again, it's all sort of relative to your life. What does that mean? What does that look like? Because when Christ makes the sacrifice, he receives this favor to be literally reborn, to literally be resurrected out of the power and the grip of death and hell. And so, of course, we got to backtrack a little bit into this garden, right? So we begin with Adam and Eve. They're in the garden, and the place is called Eden, right? The Bible said that God planted a garden eastward in Eden. And Eden means, it's from an Aramaic word that means well-watered place or plenty. And it also means pleasure, okay? So within the garden, and again, this is a walled garden, right? So it's a secure place in some sense, but there's boundaries, there's borders. And they're within this garden, and God says you can freely eat of any tree in here, okay? Which kind of puts a picture in your mind of maybe this is more like an orchard than it is like a botanical garden, but regardless, right? There's plenty there. There is sufficient supplies, right? And you can have anything in here. Just don't eat off of this one tree. And it is the tree of knowledge. Now we call it the tree of knowledge of good and evil. which we'll talk about that. But the tree of knowledge, don't eat off of that one. Now, we've talked about, too, what it represents, that, that they were in Eden. They were within their naivety. They were within their childlikeness. They were in their childhood, perhaps. They were immature. And then when the serpent comes and beguiles the woman, right, she hears the whisper. And in some interpretations of the story, Adam is actually there with her. He's actually standing there when all of this is going down between her and the serpent. But regardless, she hears this whisper. We've talked about that too. The snake or serpent is actually the word hiss, and which it comes from another word that means whisper. And so she hears the whisper, or she hears this voice, or perhaps a talking snake comes up to her and says, "Hey, try this fruit," right? And we don't know what it was. It was an apple. It was a monk fruit. It was a, whatever. I don't know. Who cares? The point is, she eats this fruit, and then her eyes are opened, right? She's enlightened. And then she says, "Hey, you got to try this stuff," right? This makes everything really clear. And it's kind of one of those moments of coming out of the cave, right? It's sort of coming out of the cave and into the light, and it's this revelation. Only their revelation is, we're naked. Well, what does that mean? What means we're vulnerable? And so what they realize is their vulnerability, right? Because we're the only, we're the only animals that stand up on their hind legs, technically, right? And we expose our bellies. And so it's this sort of instinctual thing that, I am vulnerable, right? I got some very precious parts that need to be covered up. And so they go and hide themselves. They make themselves clothes and all this stuff. But within this garden, right, this place of plenty, this well-watered place, a place of pleasure, we could imagine this place as something like childhood or childlikeness. Perhaps your childhood wasn't that great, so we'll just call it the childlikeness, okay? And of course, we've talked about this ad nauseum, right? But the childlikeness. And within the childlikeness, there is this plenty, right? And not only plenty, but pleasure. There's joy in the childlikeness because it is full of opportunity and imagination. And when kids engage in play, imaginative play specifically, not necessarily like games where there's rules and stuff, although they make their own rules within their imaginative play, there's not really any rules, right? You can kind of do what you want. You can kind of go where you want. You can sort of eat what you want, right? You can eat of all the trees in this garden. Imagine the possibilities. So within this childlikeness, there is all this freedom. There's all this openness. And they are told to be fruitful and multiply. Now, I don't know if you've noticed or not, but trees don't really have to work to produce fruit, right? So there was no real work in it. And of course, when we engage in creative play, whatever that is, maybe you don't play with Barbies anymore or G.I. Joes, or maybe you don't run out in the backyard and pick up a stick and pretend you're King William or whatever and you're fighting the dragon. But perhaps you play music, or you write, or you paint, or you draw, or, you engage in you do some carpentry or something along those lines, right? You build chairs or whatever, right? You do all sorts of things that are these sort of creative expressions. And while there are some rules that kind of come along with some of those things, there's still this understanding that I can do anything I want, right? I can go anywhere I want with this. It's like music. There's sort of a structure to music, but it's a very loose structure most of the time. And music continuously grows over and over and over. And just when you think you reach the crescendo and then the song's ready to end, there's something else. It's constantly evolving. It's constantly transforming. It's constantly taking you to new heights over and over and over. And so within this garden, there is plenty. It's well watered with the ideas and the thoughts of God. It's just literally being funneled in there. And the thing about this garden is that it had a river that ran through it. Now, there's another place in the Bible where they talk about a river running through it, in the book of Revelation, right? There's a river that runs through this city, But this river is flowing in, and it's supplying the garden, but also, and we can understand that maybe Eden was a high place. Maybe it was like on a mountaintop or up elevated a little bit, because it also has 4 heads that come out of it that flow out and water the whole earth, right? And so what we can, of course, glean and understand from this is that this mountainous high place, whatever it is, this high garden, it's a place that transcends the human ability. It's a place that transcends my physical form. It transcends the things that I think or that I'm capable of doing, and it takes me into a whole new realm of possibilities and imagination and hope that I don't have without being connected to God within this place. And the Bible said that they walked with God, right? They walked with Him in the cool of the day, in the garden. They're communing with God. There's this relationship that's taking place between God and His creation. But then, of course, we have this serpent thing happening. And within that, Adam and Eve's eyes are opened. Again, they're open to their vulnerability. And within, or because they are open to their vulnerability, they understand I can be hurt, right? Within my vulnerability, or realizing my vulnerability, I can be harmed. I could be attacked, or I could be killed, or this part could be broken in me, and whatever else, right? And that's where they understand, wait a minute, I also have the possibility or the capability of hurting someone else, which is now the understanding of good and evil. So I understand now, or the tree of knowledge has given me the knowledge of good and evil. So I can understand how I can be hurtful or harmful towards someone, or I can also, obviously be good to a person, right? So I understand. I see both sides of the picture. So God tells Adam, because of what you've done, and the woman, Eve, because of what you've done, you're going to have to labor now. You're going to have to make these sacrifices now. You're going to have to give up the current moment for something in the future. You're going to have to work by the sweat of your brow, and the woman is going to have to sacrifice her body in childbirth. And not only that, she's going to have to sacrifice her child to the serpent, because the Bible said that, or he says to the serpent, you will bruise the child's heel, and the child's foot will crush your head. And so it's this understanding that not only are you making sacrifices, but you're going to have to teach your children how to make those sacrifices, and you're ultimately going to have to sacrifice your child to the world, to society. I talked a little bit about adolescence last week, because that is the period of time where the child is separating from the parents and vice versa. And within that, you have the risk of, especially women, especially mothers, trying to hold on to the child, right? And this is why you have to have the paternal spirit within the family. This is why it takes at least 2 people to raise a child. But the woman, the mother, wants to hold on to the child, right? I don't want to give my baby up. I don't want to give my child up. But you have to. You have to sacrifice them to the world. And that is why Mary is the Holy Mother. That's why she is the High Mother, because she understood the sacrifice that had to be made. Because you holding them back, that's the story of the devouring mother. That's the Oedipal complex, right? The Oedipus. Go look it up. Interesting story. But basically, the mother wants to have and hold and consume the child and keep her to herself. So we have this understanding again that there are these sacrifices that have to be made. And of course, again, they have to be these proper sacrifices. Now, there's another garden in the Scriptures in the Song of Solomon. And you can go Song of Solomon chapter 8, I think it's verse 11. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's right. Song of Solomon 8:11 actually tells us a little bit about that garden. I have that reference right. Hang on. I'm in the wrong interpretation. So 8:11. Solomon had a vineyard in Baal Hamon. Baal Hamon. Now, vineyard, okay? It's basically the same thing. Garden, vineyard. Again, we're kind of in this, Eden, maybe it was an orchard. Maybe Eden was an orchard. There was lots of fruit trees there, so, okay, that puts you kind of in the mind of the orchard. And again, there's walls around the garden, right? That's, to keep critters out and so on and so forth. Of course, obviously, within the walls of the garden, we find that there's a snake, right? And the snake is, or the serpent, rather, is a predatory creature. And what we understand, too, is that no matter how many walls we build up, there is always the possibility of a predator getting in, okay? So maybe you build walls in your life, but you're still exposed to the potential for those predators to come into your life, right? To take advantage of you. Whoever that is, whatever that is. But then also, you have even further or even deeper, you have this garden within yourself. The inner garden, right? And within the inner garden, you also maybe put up walls, but you still have to deal with the serpents. You still have to deal with the snakes that are going to come in and try to spoil things, right? That's why, there's lots of saints that are snake expellers or whatever, snake destroyers. But specifically St. Patrick, right? The legend is that he sent all of the snakes out of Ireland, right? So he dispelled or dispensed with all of the serpents. But regardless, you're going to have those things that are going to come up. And so within this garden, this Baal Hamon, I found this interesting because within Eden, again, you have this name, you have this understanding that this place is a place of plenty. It's well watered, it's well supplied, and it is a place of pleasure. Baal Hamon means Lord of abundance. Lord of abundance. And this is what in Song of Solomon chapter 5, and of course, if you've read the Song of Solomon, you understand this is sort of this back and forth between Solomon and this Shunammite woman, right? And they're having this what do you call it? Repartee? Is that what they call that? Is that the right word? They're doing this little back and forth. They're doing this dance, right? And again, so we come from Eden and we're in this imagination, in this imaginative place where there's plenty of possibilities, there's plenty of hope, there's all this wonderful stuff, and it transcends all the things that I could possibly come up with. And then we see this garden in the Song of Solomon, and within this place, it's a place of abundance. Abundance of what? Well, they're in this back and forth. They're in this play, or they're playing this game, right? But it's sort of a sensual game, right? I want to come to you. I want you to come to me. I want to be with you. I want to love you. I want to kiss you. And your eyes are like, whatever. And it's all these crazy descriptions and stuff. But it's this back and forth, right? And in chapter 5, let me make sure I get the right verse here. Chapter 5, skip down to verse 2. This is the woman speaking. She says, "After this I let my devotion slumber, but my heart for him stayed awake. I had a dream. I dreamed of my beloved. He was coming to me in the darkness of night. The melody of the man I love, awakened me. I heard his knock at my heart's door as he pleaded with me, 'Arise, my love. Open your heart, my darling, deeper still to me. Will you receive me this dark night? There is no one else but you, my friend, my equal. I need you this night to arise and come be with me. You are my pure, loyal dove, a perfect partner for me. My flawless one, will you arise? For my heaviness and tears are more than I can bear. I have spent myself for you throughout the dark night.'" And the sleeping bride says, "I have already laid aside my own garments for you. How would I take them up again since I've yielded my righteousness to yours? You have cleansed my life and taken me so far. Isn't that enough? My beloved reached into me to unlock my heart. The core of my very being trembled at his touch. How my soul melted when he spoke to me. My spirit arose to open for more of his touch. As I surrendered to him, I began to sense his fragrance, the fragrance of his suffering love. It was the sense of myrrh flowing all through me. I opened my soul to my beloved, but suddenly he was gone. And my heart was torn out in longing for him. I sought his presence, his fragrance, but could not find him anywhere. I called out for him, yet he did not answer me. I will arise and search for him until I find him. As I walked throughout the city in search of him, the overseers stopped me as they made their rounds. They beat me and bruised me until I could take no more. They wounded me deeply and removed my covering from me. Nevertheless, make me this promise, you brides to be. If you find my beloved one, please tell him I endured all travails for him. I've been pierced through by love and will not turn aside. What love is this? This is the brides to be, or the bridesmaids. How could you continue to care so deeply for him? Isn't there another one who could steal away your heart? We see now your beauty more beautiful than all the others. What makes your beloved better than any other? What is it about him that makes you ask us to promise you this? And then she goes on and she says, he alone is my beloved. He shines in dazzling splendor, yet is still so approachable, without equal as he stands above all others, outstanding among 10,000. The way he leads me is divine. His leadership so pure and dignified as he wears his crown of gold. Upon his crown are letters of black written on a background of glory. He sees everything with pure understanding. How beautiful his insights without distortion. His eyes rest upon the fullness of the river of revelation flowing so clean and pure. Looking at his gentle face, I see such fullness of emotion, like a lovely garden where fragrant spices grow. What a man. No one speaks words so anointed as this one, words that both pierce and heal, words like lilies dripping with myrrh. See how his hands hold unlimited power, but he never uses it in anger, for he is always holy, displaying his glory. His innermost place is a work of art, so beautiful and bright. How magnificent and noble is this one, covered in majesty. He's steadfast in all he does. His ways are the ways of righteousness, based on truth and holiness. None can rival him, but all will be amazed by him. Most sweet are his kisses, even his whispers of love. He is delightful in every way and perfect from every viewpoint. If you ask me why I love him so, O brides to be, it's because there is none like him to me. Everything about him fills me with holy desire, and now he is my beloved, my friend forever. And then they say, this is the last couple verses in chapter 6, O rarest of beauty, where then has your love gone? We long to see him too. Where may we find him? We will follow you as you seek after him. And she says, my lover has gone down into his garden of delight, to the flower beds of spices, to feast with those pure in heart. I am fully devoted to my beloved, and my beloved is fully devoted to me. Now from this garden, and that's a beautiful passage. I'm not going to expound on that. You take that beauty for what it is. I don't need to explain any of that to you. But from this garden, we go to another garden. And this garden is familiar to us, especially on this week, because this is the place where Christ comes. And he's been here before. He was off to go and pray, right? That's what the scripture says. He often would step away, and I'm sure that he found places in nature. And hey, it might have been this very garden every time. We don't know. But he goes to this garden called Gethsemane. Now, the word Gethsemane means olive press. When you break down the two words that make up Gethsemane, it means wine press and it means oil. But within those two words, there's another understanding, and it's the word for oil that means fat or fatness or plenty or there's a lot of it, right? I got a little excess myself these days, right? But fat, there's plenty. This is also a place that is filled. It's filled with something that is ready to burst and ready to flow to create something altogether new. And so it's from this garden, Christ goes, and again, this is an elevated place, right? It's a place that's up in the hills where they're growing these olive trees. If you've ever seen one, it's a really neat setup. The olive orchards, I guess is what they call them technically. But regardless, he's there. He's transcending yet again. He's having to go up into a higher plane. He's having to go up into a place where he can meet with his Father. He can meet with the divine, and they can have a conversation about what the sacrifice is that needs to be made. And within these moments in the garden, of course, he's there, and he's got a few of his disciples with him, and they're sleeping. I mean, God bless them, but they're knocked out, right? They're Adam. I mean, they're just dead to the world, right? And so he goes into this moment of prayer, or these moments of prayer, rather, as he does it multiple times. And you can imagine the intensity of what he's feeling based on the fact that he knows, I'm about to have to make this huge sacrifice. I'm about to have to go into this thing, and it's going to totally destroy everything that I understand about me as a person in this human form, right? And that is the great difficulty of sacrifice, especially the proper sacrifices, is that sometimes that means that part of me, or potentially most of me, or possibly all of me has to die. And so he's in this moment of prayer, and the Bible said, of course, he's praying the prayer that if there's any other way, let this cup pass from me. And the Bible said his sweat became as great drops of blood. And within the winepress, we see this one that is full, the actual fullness of God, the fullness of God in bodily form. We see him being crushed and pressed. And the juice is flowing, the blood is flowing, it's already being shed. And Christ is overcoming within this place, within this moment. He's transcending the physical realm. He's going into a whole new arena. And he's overcoming in that moment. He's already overcoming death. He's already overcoming hell. He's already overcoming the grave in this. Really, what is the true sacrifice? What's the true moment of him coming to the realization, this has to happen. This has to die. This body, this form, this flesh has to be broken. It's within that moment, in that garden, that he has to, or that he realizes the reality of this sacrifice. Now again, Christ has invited us into this suffering. He's invited us into this sacrifice. It's like, man, that seems really, really tough. That seems really, really hard. But it's in this place that we find the potential for the freedom to really be what we're supposed to be, or to be who God created us to be. It's within this place that we're able to find true liberty, if we're making the proper sacrifices. Now, there's this understanding from actually a few hundred years ago, a Catholic priest by the name of Romano Guardini. He has this idea that Mass, right? So the religious ceremony, the thing that they're doing when they go to the services every Saturday or Sunday, whatever it is. And when you go to Mass, that his words are that Mass is useless. He says the Mass is useless. And his idea is that Mass should be viewed as an opportunity to join into the divine play that God is inviting us into. And so he says, first we must understand the type of language the Mass is actually speaking. Worship isn't an intellectual exercise. The purpose of Mass isn't purely catechetical. The homily is not meant to be a lecture, and even as adults, even us adults don't know the full meaning of every action. The impulse of the priest to halt and explain every action or to delete any ritual that isn't entirely clear is a symptom of the misunderstanding concerning the true language of worship. It's perfectly acceptable to not understand everything happening at Mass. Right? It's the same thing for us, right? We don't do Mass in the Catholic sense, but we have a service that is similar to what they're doing. There's songs, there's singing. It's us up here leading you all into a song where we're singing to God, and God's of course speaking to us in moments, and we're responding to Him, right? So we're singing songs of praise, and we're singing songs of response to the love of God, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, we have the breaking of bread in the form of the Scripture or the Word. Of course, again, the understanding there being much deeper, but we have this breaking of bread in this spiritual sense, where they take the actual communion or the sacrament. In fact, a bit of mystification, he says, is to be expected because the language of Mass isn't prose. It's poetry. The Mass is a poem. And it uses the language of imagination and hope. Who speaks this type of imaginative language on a regular basis? Children. In Spirit of the Liturgy, Romano Guardini indicates as much writing. The liturgy gives 1,000 strict and careful directions on the quality of the language, gestures, colors, garments, and instruments which it employs, and it can only be understood by those who are able to take art and play seriously. When he refers to play, Guardini means an activity that is undertaken for its own sake with no further motives. It is children who naturally take this type of activity seriously. They spend vast quantities of their day in the world of imagination and play. They speak the language of poetry, which Aristotle teaches is a communication of what might be and what ought to be. So the language of poetry is a communication of what might be and what ought to be. And again, this is the childlike, right? This is the place that we are trying to return to, because so many of us have taken the understanding of being kicked out of the garden, quote unquote, or so to speak, that we've been kicked out of paradise, we've been kicked out of the place where we have pleasure and plenty, and we have to work, we have to toil, we have to put our hands in the dirt, we have to sacrifice our bodies, we have to sacrifice our time, we have to do all of these things, and none of this is pleasurable. None of this is enjoyable. But now, like I said Wednesday, if your work is something that does bring you meaning and purpose, right, then you may find it pleasurable. Maybe your job, I'm saying, your actual employment, right? But that's such a Western way of thinking about things. Just like play, we think that play is something frivolous, something that really we have no time for or we have no space for because we're so busy. We're so worried about what we have to get done because there's always something to accomplish. Where play is not this meaningless, useless, worthless time where you just do nothing, but it is a moment for you to do something and not think about a purpose or a reason for doing it. I don't have to have a reason to love somebody. I don't have to have a reason to be kind to someone. I don't have to have a reason to be a peacemaker. I don't have to have reasons for these things. And that can be that divine play. That can be those moments of creativity. And again, it could be things like music and art and whatever else, right? It could be all those things. Writing, maybe you're a writer. Write something, right? Take your imagination out into wherever it's going to go. Let it open the cells of your heart and let the Spirit of God lead you into those creative moments. So, in Proverbs chapter 8, you can turn there if you want to. Proverbs chapter 8, there are some questions, and there's some interesting understanding here about a thing called wisdom, an entity called wisdom, the spirit of wisdom. He says, does not wisdom call out? Does not understanding raise her voice? At the highest point along the way where the paths meet, she takes her stand. Beside the gate leading into the city, at the entrance, she cries aloud, to you, O people, I call out, I raise my voice to all mankind. You who are simple, gain prudence. You who are foolish, set your hearts on it. Listen, for I have trustworthy things to say. I open my lips to speak what is right. My mouth speaks what is true, for my lips detest wickedness. All the words of my mouth are just. None of them are crooked or perverse. To the discerning, all of them are right. They are upright to those who have found knowledge. Choose my instruction instead of silver, knowledge rather than gold, for wisdom is more precious than rubies, and nothing you can desire can compare to her. I, wisdom, dwell together with prudence. I possess knowledge and discretion. To fear the Lord is to hate evil. I hate pride and arrogance, evil behavior, and pervasive speech. Counsel and sound judgment are mine. I have insight. I have power. I have insight, I have power. By me, kings reign and rulers issue decrees that are just. By me, princes govern and nobles, all who rule on the earth. I love those who love me, and those who seek me find me. With me are riches and honor, enduring wealth and prosperity. My fruit is better than fine gold. What I yield surpasses choice silver. I'll walk in the way of righteousness along the paths of justice, bestowing a rich inheritance on those who love me and making their treasuries full. The Lord brought me forth as the first of his works. Before his deeds of old, I was formed long ages ago, at the very beginning, when the world came to be. When there were no watery depths, I was given birth. Then there were no springs overflowing with water. Before the mountains were settled in place, before the hills, I was given birth. Before he made the world, or its fields, or any of the dust of the earth. I was there when he set the heavens in place, when he marked out the horizon on the face of the deep, when he established the clouds above and fixed securely the fountains of the deep. When he gave the sea its boundary, so the waters would not overstep his command. And when he marked out the foundations of the earth, then I was constantly at his side. I was filled with delight day after day, rejoicing always in his presence, rejoicing in his whole world and delighting in mankind. Now, I love those last few verses there. We're going to stop at 31. 30 through 31. A better translation is, I was with him, forming all things, and was delighted every day, playing before him at all times, playing in the world, and my delights were to be with the children of men. This spirit of wisdom is the same thing as the Logos in the New Testament. And what we understand about the Logos is that the Logos was Christ, and the Christ was with God, and he was God. And not only that, but we are included in that. And so we were with God in the beginning. And what were we doing? We were constantly in his presence. We were constantly playing. We were constantly finding our delight in him and within his creation. In those moments when the earth began to be formed and all of this stuff started swirling about, we were already there. And so it's for us to remember, it's for us to recognize that place and to return to it or to dwell in it. Now, there's one more garden. And I know I'm moving kind of fast because I figure everybody's probably got a turkey or a ham or something. I don't know what you got waiting on you. Maybe you're just going to Golden Corral or Cracker Barrel. And that's okay too. But there's one more garden. Now, within this garden, there's a cave. Okay? And you say, a cave? What are you talking about? The tomb. The tomb. It's a gigantic hole that's been carved into the rock, right? That's a cave, in case you hadn't noticed. And Christ enters the cave, right? I know, we're back to the cave. So Christ enters the cave. He enters into the darkness. For what purpose? To bring us out of the darkness. Our hero has ascended. He has descended. He has transcended. And now he's leading us out of the darkness of the cave, out of the darkness of our illusions, out of the darkness of when we look in this glass, oh, we only see darkly. We only see shadows. We only see figures. No, now we see clearly this one that has brought us out of darkness into his marvelous light. And on the first day of the week, John chapter 20 said, the first day of the week, Mary goes to the tomb. So Christ has already died. He's had this enormous amount of suffering that he has attended to, that he has experienced, and now he's dead. So they prepare his body, they wrap him up, right? They bind him up in these different bindings. They anoint his body with these spices, and they put him in this cave. Put a stone over in front of it. There's no light in this cave except for the light of Christ, except for the light that Christ is. And so he's all bound up in there. They've set him aside, and now Mary's coming, and she's going to do the same thing again. She's going to go and anoint his body once again. First day of the week, she gets there. There's a problem. And she's the first one to arrive, right? And just like Eve, she's the first one to be awakened. She's the first one to be enlightened. It's the spirit of the feminine that is there that she becomes aware. That's what awakens in us, that lights up the room rather. And so she comes to this place. She finds an empty tomb. Some of the disciples come and they look and they're like, "Oh my gosh, he's gone. His body's gone." And so they take off running. They're gone. They're trying to figure out what's happening. She's still kind of in the vicinity of this garden, right? She's still sort of in the area. And then she's in panic mode too, but she goes back to the tomb and she looks again and she sees these angelic figures, these beings of light, and they're like, why are you here? Who are you looking for? And then she turns around and she sees a gardener. And she's like, wait a minute, did you take his body away? Did you take him away? If you took him away, please tell me that where you took my Lord so that I can know. And the gardener, all of a sudden, becomes recognizable. And she's like, wait a minute. And he says, go tell Peter and my disciples that I've risen. Go let them know the good news, right? And so she immediately goes. And it's within this moment that we understand or we recognize that Christ really has or really is the fullness of this imagination and hope that we maybe lost in some sense in Eden. The one that we're looking for, we're searching for. Well, where did he go? He went down into the garden. He went down into his garden and he was anointed with myrrh. Oh, I can smell his fragrance. And as she got closer, hey, maybe that's what it was. As she got closer, of course, she realizes, wait, this looks like my Lord. This looks like my Savior. Oh, I smell that sweet fragrance of myrrh. I'm the one that anointed him with that. I'm the one that put that on him. And it's in a moment of hide and seek. It's in a moment of pretend play that Christ reveals himself. He's sitting there having fun. He's sitting there playing games. And then, a week later, that night, they're gathered together, right? And they're all like, Mary, tell us about it. What's going on? Oh, I'm telling you, I saw him. And he said to say this. And it was unbelievable. It was incredible. I mean, I was totally in shock. And then, boom, Christ appears and he goes, boo. No, not really. He says, peace be with you. because he scared the crap out of them. But Jesus is playing. What are you doing, man? Boo! Wake up! Wake up! I don't remember the song. I can't remember the words. It's a rock song, sorry. But Christ appears. And yet again, he's playing games. He's walking through walls. He's goofing off with them. It's like, what? What? You were dead. Some of us actually saw you take on this enormous suffering. This incredible sacrifice was made. And yet, you're here acting like nothing ever happened. You're here acting like this was all fun and games. And while it is something to be taken deadly seriously, it's something that happened without any real purpose. I'm not trying to do something. It was an act of total love. It was an act of total and complete love. Let me find this one last thing. Oh, I lost it. Okay. I lost it. Forgive me. But life and love, being, it's all about, love really is about pouring out your being, right? It's about pouring out yourself. And there is no end in it. I'm not trying to accomplish something. We make the cross about something that God was trying to accomplish. But it was the most divine play that He's ever exhibited. And He is inviting us into that divine play. And while there is suffering, there is pain, I'm not saying it's not painful. I'm not saying you won't make sacrifices. I'm not saying it won't hurt. I'm not saying that there won't be moments where it's like, it is so dark in here that I can't imagine what it would be like to even see a light. But it is this divine invitation into this ultimate act of creativity, in this resurrection, in this recreation, right? God poured out all of Himself, but not because He wanted you to do something, not because He was trying to accomplish some goal in particular, but because He loves you. Period. End of story. He loves you. He loves humanity. He loves creation. So the act of redemption is simply an act of love. And that's what play is. Play is doing something without any real purpose or goal in mind. It's just experiencing life and being itself right here in the moment. And it's me pouring myself out, pouring out my creativity, pouring out my joy, pouring out all of me, every part of me. And again, I know, I get it. I get the sacrifice. I get the things that have to be destroyed or killed or given up, burned up and consumed on the altar. All those things, I get all that. We're not negating that, but we're talking about an act of love that is simply asking, be in this relationship with me. Come be with me. Come to me, my love. Come to me, my lovely one. There's not anybody else. I don't desire anyone else. I want to play with you. I want to join in with you. I want to imagine a future with you. I want to have hope with you. And that is the invitation of the cross today. And that is the joy and celebration that we have on this day in particular, or really any day, any Sunday of the year, but especially today, we celebrate this divine act of love and this divine act of play, and we join in this divine celebration. And now, just like we were before, always in His presence, always playing, always enjoying Him. Now you have that same opportunity yet again through the acts of Christ, through the sacrifice that was made, through the cross, the death, the burial, and the resurrection. And praise God ultimately for that resurrection. That is the thing that we celebrate today. So, God bless you. Let's say it with me this morning. I love Him because He first loved me. Go love your family. Go, God bless you. Happy Easter, all that good stuff.